welcome to another Cassandra Voices podcast where I am being joined by Fellipe Lopes from Brazil and resident in Ireland, living in Ireland. Um, and we're going to discuss the outcome of the first round of the Brazilian election. This is a hugely consequential election, not just for Brazilians, but for the whole world, because Brazil is an increasingly important country in the world. It contains most of Amazonia, which has been described as the lungs of the world. It has a huge and growing population. It exports a huge amount of food and other goods. And it also a lot of Brazilians live in Ireland, so it's not something that's just so remote from our lives. Most of us know Brazilians and know a bit about Brazil at this stage. Most Brazilians I meet in Ireland are deeply opposed to Bolsonaro and what he stands for, and sympathetic, at least, to Lula and the kind of left-wing politics that he represents. But as we've seen from this election result, there's still a large body of opinion in Brazil, and probably in Ireland too, which is well disposed to Bolsonaro. So, Fellipe, why do you think that is? Why are so many people still in favor of Bolsonaro? I mean, he got over 40% of the vote, so he's got a huge constituency in Brazil, presumably some in Ireland too.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me to join the Cassandra Voices podcast. It's a pleasure. So, Frank, I think in order to answer your question, we have to go back few years before the election of 2018. So back then, before this election, 2018, Brazil had a left-wing president, which was Dilma, which was the success. Anyway, somebody that came after the Lula afterwards. So Lula recommended Dilma to run as a president. She won the first election in 2010. Then she won again in 2014. And during her second administration, she suffered an impeachment, and that was pretty tough for her party, which is the same party as Lula, which is PT, which is the Workers' Party. And at that point, Brazil went deep down in this questioning of the role of PT or PT in Brazil. So at that moment, because of the corruption scandals and everything that was happening, obviously for years and years, but exposed in 2015, 16, and 17, these created this weird feeling of hatred against PT and against Lula. So I think with this anti-PT, which is in Brazil we call anti-petismo, which is be like anti this party, they are anti, no, they are corrupted, they are, there is a lot of corruption in the government. How come this is possible? And this was really well known because of the police federal operation called Car Wash, that came and exposed a lot of politicians in Brazil, not just from PT, but from other parties. Anyway, at that moment, I think Bolsonaro had been already for more than 20 years, I'm not sure exactly, but more than 20 years for sure, working as a congressman in the parliament in Rio de Janeiro. Really mediocre politician, to be really honest. With over 20 years of his working as a congressman, he proposed just two laws, just two projects in 20 years of administration working as a congressman. But anyway, he came up, he was that really funny guy on TV, on kind of comedy programs and shows, and like making jokes about women and about LGBT, and bringing up this sort of like, family values kind of thing. But I think a lot of people buy to that shit, that crap, that's the reality. And I think we were, and we still we were kind of like following the North America wave. Whatever was happening in US, we were kind of following, pretty solidly, to be really honest. And I think when Trump got elected, that was like, in Brazil, was like, whoa, wait a minute, there is definitely a possibility of elect a guy like Bolsonaro. And Bolsonaro took over that, that role, that mask, trying to sell these family values and everything. And a lot of people, again, to avoid PT and all the corruption that PT, I mean, at least the people, the population in Brazil believed that PT was involved, ended up voting to Bolsonaro in order to get rid of PT and have something new. And we understood this in 2018. It was pretty clear. It was this vote of like freedom. They were like, we have to elect somebody completely different, because obviously this is not working. So I think that's part of your answer. It's like it was a different way to have somebody new. Now in 2022, Bolsonaro is still, he actually increased his voters. Like, he got 10% more than he got last time. And the polls before the election this year were suggesting that Lula would win in the first round, but this definitely didn't help. Didn't happen. So, which means that Bolsonaro ended up gathering a lot of like secret votes, people that were not necessarily supporting Bolsonaro, or at least public supporting Bolsonaro. And I think as well, with this wave of the religion element in Brazil, which is pretty strong with the evangelicals, I think that gathered a lot of influence in Bolsonaro's administration. And,
okay, can I just dig into that there?
Yeah.
So Brazil, traditionally a Catholic country.
Yes.
There's a story in Ireland that Pelé got his name from the Irish nuns who were teaching him, who associated him with Clitha Pell, which is football in Irish, but that's probably not true. But we like to make things up in Ireland. But obviously, there's obviously still the Catholic Church in Brazil, and maybe that Catholic Church is more maybe to the left, maybe with Pope Francis, and more sort of environmentally conscious and so on. But these evangelical Christian movement, which is probably similar to what you find in America, what is the origin of that, and why have they made so much progress, do you think, in Brazil?
Well, I think first of all, a lot of those I'm gonna call as a church, even that is not a Christian church, okay, but I'm gonna call as a church from now on, that you can address this easily. So this church always has been in Brazil, and believe it or not, since I was really small, we had these churches around, those evangelical churches everywhere. So they basically say the same things that the Christians, the Catholics says, but they have a different approach, but they are way more radical. They are way more radical regarding to proposing things for people that believe them. So in terms of supporting the church, supporting the community, and with that fear, that really strong fear, saying if you don't follow up the rules, you're going to be punished. So, and those churches, they have this incredible, in a negative way, but incredible way to approach more those vulnerable communities, communities that are struggling financially, and they set up those churches, creating this feeling that church will save that community, will save that small town, will save that city, and potentially will save Brazil. So I think this movement
but clearly they're having some effect. I mean, do they provide social services, or is it just spiritual awakening and the kind of things we see on television? I mean, are they actually giving people schools and social supports, as well as?
Well, the answer, I think the straight answer would be yes. Some of them are operating this way, and I think if that's the role that God, Jesus, are saying on the Bible, That has to be done, and I'm not questioning that. The point on this on the evangelical church, Frank, is about those guys being in politics. So Brazil is a laical country. We don't mix religion with politics. That's the law. So the question, and what we've been questioning, is like, wait a minute, those priests, those pastors, they are already in power. They are congressmen, they are senators, they are governors, they are mayors, they are involved in politics in a really, really deep way. And think about that. Think as a church that are welcoming every Sunday about 5,000 people. So that priest is not a priest, but that pastor, he has the power to influence through election, through voting, a massive amount of people straight away. And I think that played really, really hard in a good way in Bolsonaro's favor. Bolsonaro saw this increase of supporters coming necessarily from evangelical churches, operating not necessarily just in big cities like São Paulo or Rio de Janeiro or Belo Horizonte, Minas Gerais. No, he started to see some sort of like appearance and some sort of like this wave increasing in Amazon, for example, in Manaus, which is the Amazônia state in Manaus, which is never was a right-wing space, a right-wing spot for any politician in Brazil, where now what we have seen now is this strong increasing of Bolsonaro's presence in the center of Brazil, which is Bolsonaro won in some states in the center of Brazil, in the north of Brazil, in the northwest, which is the Amazon area. Most of the states Bolsonaro won the election there, and this I'm pretty sure about that. The evangelical church has loads to do with Bolsonaro election. It's I mean, I'm not here to question whether you should believe in God or not, should you follow up any church or not. That's not what I'm here for, even that I don't, and I think nobody should anyway. But my point is, when you are mixing politics with religion, with beliefs, with faith, I don't think it's a good mixing. And you, as an Irishman growing up in Ireland, you know this as much as I do, that when you mix church and power, that doesn't go well.
Nothing could possibly go wrong. But I just want to go. I mean, I sense a lot of anger, and I sense a lot of anger among many Brazilians at what another Brazilian friend of mine calls the Bolsominions, or but it also strikes me that there's a sort of a superior attitude among some people towards the supporters of Bolsonaro, so I'm wondering, do they feel that too? And how is Brazil going to heal? Like, how are Brazilians going to come together after all this factionalism, in the same way as the United States has become so tribal in its politics? It seems like that kind of civil war is emerging in Brazil, and it could culminate in another military coup d'etat, could it? I don't know.
Well, this is a really well. How can I answer your question? I think, look, Frank. Yes, I am upset. A lot of Brazilians are upset, not just in Ireland but in Brazil, because I think it's difficult to, I think a couple of days ago, few days ago, we were hanging out with Daniele, and I told you that the country deserves the president that deserves, like there is not a wrong match, like whatever is going on in that country, I'm sorry, it's a reflection of the population. It's pretty simple. It's difficult for a lot of Brazilians, including myself, to accept that Bolsonaro has expanded his followers, people that are supporting him big time, and it's challenging to kind of believe that. And but one thing that I think one thing that should be addressed now, whether Lula will win the election the second round or not, is that Bolsonaro He already won this election. He's a winner in this election. Regardless, he already won this election. Whether he's going to win in the second round or not, he already won the election. And I tell you why. So if you break down who has been already elected for the Senate in Brazil, for the Parliament House in Brazil, they are majority politicians that support Bolsonaro. So if Lula on the second round he beats Bolsonaro and he wins the election, Lula will struggle so badly to approve any of his proposals, any of his new regulations and projects. He will struggle a lot because the majority in the parliament they are already Bolsonaro supporters. And now the Senate, the same thing. So I'm sorry, whether Bolsonaro going to win or not, he already won this election. That, you know, it's pretty clear. Most of the governors in Brazil that was elected yesterday, because we had 4 elections yesterday for Senate, for governors, Parliament House, and for president. So even governors as well, a lot of governors, they are Bolsonaro supporters. So I think there is a lot of anger. Yes, there is a lot of, but one thing should be clear. We should clarify here, Frank. I think the reason why we are upset is because we didn't take the time to do a self-reflection, how the left wing in Brazil are engaging with the communities. We didn't for 4 years during Bolsonaro's administration, and I'm including myself on that. The left wing in Brazil did not engage properly, did not know how to communicate with the audience, the followers, the supporters. They didn't know how to do it. And believe me, okay, it's clear that after Lula being arrested for over 2 years, being released, and then even though at the age of 75, he still run for president, he still get 48%, it's a big thing. It's like, wow, this guy has a massive influence. When he left the office 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago, 12 years ago, he had the biggest popularity in the history in Brazil. He had over 90% of his popularity. So obviously a lot of people has good memories, including me, that I was lucky enough to join a university because the government had a program for that I had access to university. So, but even though it's difficult, and one thing should be questioned at the moment, Frank, is like, Lula was the guy that was first elected in 2002, and we are in 2022. This guy is still running for president. We don't have any, and nobody knew, like, that is, we're not preparing the next generation. We're not getting ready. And PT, the Workers' Party in Brazil, they're standing next to Lula, despite his age, despite maybe his faults, you know, but that's the scenario we have. So I think that's why we are upset. We are not happy about this first round. A lot of people did expect that Lula would win, but unfortunately it didn't happen.
So I suppose there are some parallels with what's happened in the United States, where obviously Biden is a similar age group. But I want to, like, obviously people are beating themselves up now in Brazil, Brazilians around the world, about what's happened, and saying, oh, it's our fault. We should have engaged more with people. We should have persuaded our friends and family and neighbors who voted Bolsonaro. But there's also, I suppose, I remember in the aftermath of the last presidential election in Brazil, there was a lot of talk about WhatsApp groups and the role of social media and social media providers and social media advertising, maybe, and and that kind of Cambridge Analytica stuff that's going on in all elections, probably. But can you shed a little bit of light on that in terms of what's happened in Brazil in recent times?
Yeah, I think the social media plays a massive role in the elections in 2018, and a massive role in this election again. And again, I don't know how and why, but definitely the far right in Brazil did know how to engage better on the social media. Obviously, I'm not saying that they're using the best tools and the best practice, because they are definitely not. but they spread a lot of like fake news, and they spread a lot of, you know, those WhatsApp groups engage in different ways. And like as much as you remember, when Donald Trump was banned from Twitter, like Bolsonaro had similar thoughts about it. Like, it would be amazing if I was banned because I could join this group of people that doesn't have the freedom of speech. But having said that, going back to social media, I think the social media creates this space where it's like without any regulation, without any control. You know, it's not like a journal, a newspaper, a magazine, you know, a news on a TV. Is like, it's different, you know, like people just spread fake news, and it's wrong, yes, obviously, but Bolsonaro played so well this card, so well, that resulted in a lot of things during the debates, before, in the last few weeks, you know, between the candidates, sorry, Bolsonaro was literally spreading fake news, one after another one, on the media, on the news, on the national channel, and he didn't care. And despite the you know, the possible editing that they would do afterwards, but when you say this in the national channel or on the social media, this goes along. Another thing as well, Frank, that it is extremely important to highlight here. Over 4 years of Bolsonaro's administration, I can count in my hands how many times Bolsonaro went in a TV channel or with a newspaper, like a big newspaper in Brazil, or even a big newspaper, you know, Europe, like the Guardian or the Irish Times or the New York Times, whatever. Bolsonaro never joined any interview on those channels, never. He created his own media, his own YouTube channel, his own group, Facebook, WhatsApp, whatever, and he was delivering the message, delivering his progress on his administration just over there, you know. So I think this
good.
Yeah.
Okay, so I just want to follow that up because you know, obviously he's doing it through YouTube, through Facebook, through Twitter, all the various social media channels, and they're letting him do that. They're letting him disseminate what you describe as fake news. So why hasn't there been political pressure? And maybe we can't answer this question. Why hasn't, you know, the United States government actually put pressure on the social media companies to rein in and to stop this behavior? If he is the Trump of the tropics, if they are trying to you know, protect kind of free speech, really, because if you're putting out fake news, then that's an attack on free speech, because you're undermining the whole basis of knowledge if you just put out nonsense. So why do you think, you know, is it possible that many American interests in the extraction industry and in the agribusiness, they want to keep Bolsonaro there?
I think that's a really important question, Frank, and a really important point to discuss. Well, you know, was, yes, official attempts through our constitution to ban and to remove those tweets and those videos and those fake news. There was a lot of attempts, and it was some success on that, yes, but not enough. And I think this is a way bigger conversation when it goes to media and free of speech in Brazil. It's a really delicate, and again, as I just said, Bolsonaro, yes, he has the majority now in the parliament, but he had already the majority in the parliament anyway. So who is going to create a national investigation towards Bolsonaro when he has the majority? Who is going to vote to allow that investigation move forward with the federal police that Bolsonaro changed the main commander of the federal police in Brazil? He had influenced the federal police in Brazil should be, according to our constitution, an independent mechanism, independent organ, completely, you know, apart from the power. So, but they didn't. What actually Bolsonaro did was to chop it off slowly commanders and people that were actually investigating and replacing those those chiefs and those whatever investigators with people that he does trust. And I think that created this weird space where media, where fake news was being spread over the social media so easily without any problem. So I think it's a big question, and I think I go along with you on that. I think whether America did have interest in Brazil being the situation, maybe before Biden, maybe yes. I cannot guarantee. I don't maybe have enough knowledge to say, but I think that what I can tell you is that yes, America now has already announced that depending what happens with the election of this year, US will not engage with Brazil anymore. So there is already a lot of international, some sort of international pressure towards Brazil, depending what happens, because it's well known what's going on in Brazil. It's clear what's going on in Brazil. Not that long ago, a British journalist was killed in Brazil. A former The Guardian journalist was killed in Brazil, and the Bolsonaro's administration didn't do anything, absolutely nada, nothing, which was extremely, that shows exactly how the investigation in this regard are happening. And he was a journalist reporting climate change in Amazon, for example.
Okay, great. Okay, well, just to round things up, what happens next? I mean, we're assuming that Lula wins, but he doesn't have much power when he comes when he becomes after becoming president. So where do you see things going over the next few years?
I think we have two scenarios, Frank. I think, and they are pretty obvious scenarios. I think the number one is, yes, if Lula wins the election, Lula will have a massive challenge ahead. Like he will need to deal and to engage with the parliament and try to get his projects move forward, and with the Senate as well. Now, Lula, it's extremely well known for being an articulator. That's his probably best skill. He's good on that. When he got in the power in 2000.
Sorry, just so everyone understands, do you mean a public speaker?
Yes, a public speaker, and he knows how to articulate things inside. He's really good with people and stuff. So thank you for that. But yeah, basically, he's really good. When he got in the power in 2002, he changed the game. And he had a similar scenario back then. Obviously, Brazil, 20 years ago, Brazil was a completely different country where it is now. And the second scenario will be if Bolsonaro wins the election. And then, to be really honest with you, I don't know where Brazil is going to be. Our international relations are completely destroyed. Brazil, unfortunately, are in this really, really bad position to be, it's just people are laughing at Brazil, and like it's a joke what we are doing in Amazon. It's a joke what Bolsonaro's administration did during the pandemic. 700,000 people died in Brazil. Almost a million, more than 500,000 people died in Brazil. This is like a giant number, Frank. It's a giant number. And I'm not even talking about how he was censored journalists and how he was after media, traditional media, not just Brazilian media in Brazil, but also international media, as I said, The Guardian and other like BBC and other big newspapers around the world were having a lot of challenge to report what actually was happening in Brazil. So I think it's a big question mark. I'm hoping that yes, as I said in the beginning, yes, the polls before the election did suggest that Lula would win in the first round and didn't. Where now what Lula has to do is go after other supporters, people that voted for other candidates that had a really small percentage of votes, like 3-5%, and try to gather those votes and make sure that who voted for Lula in the first round will go back and vote again. That's what I hope for. We are in a really uncomfortable situation, to be honest. And I'm hoping that on the 3rd of October, we all Brazilians, we go again and we vote for Lula. And again, I'm not here supporting Lula as my favorite candidate, and I would like to make this really clear here. Is either having Bolsonaro and not having democracy, or having Lula and pray for the best. That's pretty much what we are.
Okay. So you're going to say your prayers, Felipe?
Yes.
You've become religious all of a sudden.
I know. I got, well, I hope I don't get too much.
Okay. Well, I have to be a little bit neutral on this, but I think everybody in the world is hoping that we see the end of Bolsonaro, even if the political situation won't be perfect in the second round. And so good night, and thanks to Fellipe Lopes for joining us on our latest Cassandra Voices podcast. Thank you.
Thank you very much.